It begins on a gray, rainy afternoon, November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. You walk into Portland International Airport carrying nothing more suspicious than a black case and a folded raincoat. To the ticket agent, you're just another traveler buying a one-way ticket to Seattle for $20 in cash. Your name, written neatly on the slip. Don Cooper. No one looks twice. No metal detectors, no TSA checkpoints, no cameras watching every move. Flying in 1971 is casual, almost carefree, and you fit right in. You board Northwest Orient Flight 305, a Boeing 727 scheduled for a quick 30-minute hop north. You take seat 18C, near the rear of the cabin. It's not a crowded flight, 36 passengers in total, with a handful of crew. Some are tired business travelers, some young families, some students heading home for the holiday. Everyone settles in with magazines and small talk. The hum of the jet engines builds as the aircraft taxis down the runway. You sit quietly, in your suit and tie, ordering a bourbon and soda once the plane is airborne. Nothing in your manner suggests panic or malice. You smoke a cigarette, flicking the ash into the tray built into your armrest. The flight attendants, young women in neat uniforms, pass by with drinks and smiles. To them, you look like a polite, middle-aged businessman, not someone about to reroute the plane's history. Then you make your move. When stewardess Florence Schaffner walks past, you hand her a folded note. She slips it into her pocket without reading it. Happens often enough. Men sliding phone numbers or hotel keys. You lean toward her, your voice low but steady. Miss, you'd better read that. I have a bomb. She pulls out the note and sees the words typed neatly on plain paper. I have a bomb in my briefcase. Sit beside me. You are being hijacked. No spelling errors, no dramatic flourish. Just clear instructions. Historians still debate whether the calm, direct style hints at military training or simply a man who rehearsed every word. Schaffner obeys. She slides into the seat beside you. You crack open the briefcase just enough for her to glimpse inside. Red cylinders wrapped in wires. Sticks taped together, something that looks convincingly like dynamite. Whether it was real or a careful bluff remains one of the greatest questions. But she believes you, and that belief is all you need. You speak softly, never raising your voice. Your demands are specific. $200,000 in cash, for parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle to refill the plane. Nothing more, nothing less. No theatrics, no threats beyond the quiet reminder of what sits in your briefcase. Schaffner passes your demands to the cockpit. Captain William Scott radios air traffic control, his voice steady but urgent. The crew follows procedure. Passengers, meanwhile, are told only that the plane has a minor mechanical issue. No panic, no screams. They continue reading magazines and sipping drinks, unaware that a hijacking is underway just a few rows away. And you come, as ever, light another cigarette, sip your bourbon, and adjust your tie. You even joke with the flight attendants, polite and almost relaxed. That civility, the bizarre courtesy of a hijacker who tips generously and speaks gently, will become one of the defining quirks of this case. Outside, Seattle authorities scramble. Agents rush between banks collecting stacks of $20 bills. They record every serial number. The money is stuffed into a canvas bag, heavy and unmarked. Skydiving gear is borrowed from a local school. Parachutes bundled into a car and driven to the airport. Police cars lie on the runway. Reporters crowd phones across the country. Radios crackle with the word hijacking. But up here, in the dim cabin of Flight 305, everything is eerily quiet. You sit there, raincoat folded, briefcase steady, bourbon glass sweating in your hand. The stewardess beside you forces a smile, her hands trembling in her lap. You lean closer and murmur, almost reassuringly, everything will be fine, if they do what I ask. It is this moment, calm, controlled, unshaken, that will burn into history. Not the ransom, not the escape, not even the mystery of your disappearance, but the uncanny composure of a man who turned an ordinary flight into an unsolved legend, while the rest of the cabin had no idea they were part of it. The moment the captain radios your demands to the ground, the wheels of an enormous machine begin to turn. In Seattle, airline officials, the FBI, and local police rush into action, suddenly united by the voice of a man sitting quietly in seat 18C with a cigarette and a glass of bourbon. What you've asked for is simple enough on paper. $200,000 in cash, for parachutes, and a refueling truck ready when the plane lands. But in practice it means an entire city dropping everything to answer you. The cash comes first. Banks across Seattle are ordered to surrender bundles of 20s. Agents drive at breakneck speed through holiday traffic. Headlights cutting through the November rain. carrying stacks of bills and brown paper bags. At headquarters, agents spread the money across desks, counting frantically. Each serial number is logged in typewritten lists. It is tedious, bureaucratic, and utterly necessary. Later, this detail will matter. Then there are the parachutes. At first, officials attempt to deliver military chutes, the kind packed for professionals. But you refuse. You want civilian sport parachutes, the kind hobbyists use, the kind that don't require advanced training. Maybe you know exactly what you're doing, or maybe you just don't want to gamble with military hardware. Either way, the airline scrambles. Calls are made. A local skydiving school hands over for parachutes. By mistake, or perhaps because someone slipped it in, one of them isn't usable at all. A training chute sewn shut, meant only for ground practice. That odd inclusion will puzzle investigators for decades. Back in the cabin, you wait with unnerving patience. The plane circles endlessly above Puget Sound, burning fuel, passengers none the wiser. They think it's weather, or traffic control, or some ordinary inconvenience. No one realizes they're riding out the most famous hijacking in American history. The flight attendants pass along updates, their voices tight but controlled. You remain calm. You tip for drinks. You even request meals for the crew, a strangely polite gesture under the circumstances. Finally, the signal comes through. Everything you demanded is ready. The ransom, the chutes, the fuel. The captain guides the 727 towards Seattle-Tacoma International. Outside, the storm hasn't let up. Wind lashes the runway. Floodlights burn through the rain. Emergency vehicles sit in the distance, engines rumbling, waiting for an outcome no one can predict. The jet touches down with a screech of tires and rolls slowly to an isolated part of the airport. The shades stay down, as you ordered, preventing any sniper from getting a shot. A mobile stairway is brought to the rear door. Nervous figures climb up, carrying the heavy bag of cash and the parachutes. They place them just inside the cabin, careful not to startle you, then retreat into the wet night. You check everything methodically. The cash bag is solid, the straps on the parachutes intact. You nod, satisfied. Then you give an order no one expects. The passengers may leave. One by one, 36 people file down the stairs into buses, relieved but still confused. They will later discover that while they were sipping coffee and chatting, their lives were in the hands of a man who never once raised his voice. Only the pilots, the flight engineer, and 2 flight attendants remain. They are your crew now. You explain the next stage with the same calm voice. The plane must take off again, heading south. You specify the details. Fly below 10,000 feet, speed around 200 miles per hour. Landing gear extended, cabin unpressurized. To the pilots, these conditions are bizarre, but you insist. And strangely, the Boeing 727 is one of the few planes capable of flying under such unusual parameters. Historians still debate how you knew about its unique rear staircase, the feature that makes what you are planning possible. While ground staff refuel the jet, the rain continues to fall. Airport officials whisper into radios, reporters push against fences, their flashbulbs popping in the gloom. Across the nation, people tune into evening news bulletins, hanging on every new detail about the hijacker who calls himself Cooper. Inside the plane, it is eerily calm. You sit there in your neatly pressed suit, cash bag at your feet, parachutes piled beside you, smoke drifting upward from another cigarette. To the crew, your composure is more frightening than rage would ever be. You are in control, and you know it. At last, the refueling is complete. The engines spool up again, their roar filling the cabin. The 727 lurches forward, leaving the floodlights behind, lifting once more into the storm. Below, the city watches, helpless. Ahead, only rain, black sky, and the next move in your plan. The one that will make you vanish into legend. The engines drone steady as the 727 lifts into the storm again, climbing away from Seattle. The cabin feels emptier now, the chatter of passengers replaced by silence and the occasional crackle of the intercom. Only the crew remains: Captain William Scott, First Officer Bob Ratajczak, Flight Engineer Harold Anderson, and 2 flight attendants, Tina Mucklow and Florence Schaffner. You, in seat 18C, are the single passenger left, a man with a bag of money and parachute stacked by his side. You issue instructions with the same calm voice. Fly south toward Mexico City, but your precise altitude, no higher than 10,000 feet. Airspeed around 200 miles per hour. Landing gear down. Cabin unpressurized. The cockpit crew know these are odd, even dangerous parameters. The plane will guzzle fuel at that configuration. The pilots calculate the route and explain they'll need multiple refueling stops along the way. You accept your expression unchanged. As rain lashes the fuselage, The aircraft lumbers along its unusual profile. To the crew, every mile feels heavier than the last. To you, each mile is a countdown. Somewhere ahead in this storm is the moment you've planned for. You send Florence forward into the cockpit. Only Tina stays, seated near you, a silent witness. She will later tell investigators about your composure, how you spoke politely, how you seemed oddly protective of the crew's safety. You even gave her one of the ransom bundles to use as a cushion when she sat on the cold rear stairs. The cabin grows dim outside the windows, only blackness. Inside, cigarette smoke hangs in the stale air. You sort through the parachutes, selecting one carefully, strapping it to your back. The cash bag is heavy, nearly 20 pounds, bundled in rubber bands. You tie it to your body with parachute cord. Every motion is deliberate, practiced, as if you've rehearsed this alone in some quiet room for months. At 8 p.m., you stand, steady against the turbulence. You order Tina to the cockpit, leaving you alone in the cabin. She hesitates, fear flashing across her face. You reassure her again. You'll be fine. It is the last thing she hears from you. The cockpit door shuts. Now it's just you, the roaring engines, and the narrow aisle leading to the rear of the plane. You move to the back, unlatching the aft staircase, an unusual feature of the Boeing 727. Few people outside aviation know it can be deployed in flight, yet you do. Historians still debate how you learned this technical detail. Military background, inside knowledge, or just meticulous research. The warning light blinks in the cockpit. The aft stairs are open. The crew feel the change in pressure, the buffet of wind. At 8:13 p.m., the plane jolts upward, its tail forced down. In the cockpit, Captain Scott steadies the controls. Something heavy has just left the aircraft. The storm swallows you whole. Cold air tears at your suit, rain stings your face. The roar of wind deafens you. Somewhere below is endless forest, jagged ridges, icy rivers. The parachute blooms above you, or maybe it doesn't, no one knows. The darkness hides everything on the ground. The 727 continues, crew shaken but alive. They don't look back. They can't. By the time the jet lands safely hours later, you are already legend. A man who boarded with a briefcase and walked off into the storm, never to be seen again. And the question will echo for decades. Did you survive that jump, or did the wilderness swallow you, leaving only a bag of marked bills as proof you ever existed? Historians still debate whether anyone could have survived those conditions: low visibility, freezing rain, rough terrain, no clear landing zone. Yet no body is found, no chute, no man, only silence. That night, you step into American folklore. The storm keeps chewing at the tail of the 727 as you disappear into it, and the cockpit tight-lipped keeps flying because there's nothing else to do. When the airplane finally lands hours later and rolls to a stop, the rain is still needling the tarmac. Agents step aboard as if the cabin might explode. They find your seat empty, the air cold, the rear stair mechanism scorched with wind. On the carpet by row 18, a black clip-on tie from a department store, few cigarette stubs mashed to paper-thin wafers, and parachute cords snipped clean. You didn't leave a speech. You didn't leave a name that could be traced. You left artifacts like breadcrumbs dropped on a river. The case is christened with a spiky acronym NORIOC, short for Northwest Hijacking, and it is hungry from the first hour. The official story says you jumped somewhere over the dark backwoods of southwestern Washington while the plane droned on toward Reno. Chase jets were there fast, lethal, yet they saw nothing in the rain. Nothing but a black shape losing altitude and then regaining it, which could have been the 727 bobbing when the staircase slammed open. Historians still debate whether they angled the cloud ceiling, and the storm combined to make your exit effectively invisible, or whether you slipped off the ramp at a moment no human eye could have caught. Search teams fan out with maps and compasses. This is not television. There is no glowing arrow on the ground. The forest is dense, full of stump fields and bruising canyons, icy creeks that laugh at rubber boots. Volunteers, deputies, soldiers, they all trudge through it, knives of rain running down their sleeves, calling out for a body or a parachute or a bag of money that never answers back. The long November fades to winter. Footprints, if they ever existed, are long since smeared by weather. You are either alive and walking the other way, or you are somewhere under that canopy, the earth already closing its fist around you. Back at the airport, forensic work does not sleep. That tie becomes a miniature landscape of possibility. Fibers, skin cells, the faintest whisper of who you might have been. Years later, technicians will lift traces from its surface, specks of rare metals, Industrial dust that suggests you might have worked around aircraft components or exotic alloys, or just passed through the wrong factory at the right time. Historians still debate whether that microscopic halo points to insider knowledge or is simply the residue of an America busy making airplanes for a restless world. Quirky detail. The cigarette butts that could have sealed your identity vanish somewhere in the shuffle, misplaced, lost, gone. For a future that hinges on DNA, it's like watching the key to a locked door slide through a crack in the floorboards. The flight path itself becomes a battleground of rulers and rumor. Charts spread across tables, grease pencil lines rearranged. One line a published airway called Victor 23 seems to put your jump somewhere near Ariel, Washington. Later, mapping work offers a slightly different descent track. People with good boots and stronger theories pick a spot they like and hike it every season. Bar owners hang sketches of your face. Tavern calendars circle November 24th in red and call it Cooper Day. For a while, a single-road house becomes a pilgrimage site where beer meets folklore, and everyone has an uncle who swears he saw a parachute drifting behind the cedars. The FBI runs down tips the way a river runs down a mountain, touching everything. Your age, mid-40s maybe. Your voice calm, strange. Your manners, unfailingly polite, which tell nobody anything. Hundreds of suspects are checked. From Vietnam veterans who know their way around a parachute to men who vanished from their jobs the week after Thanksgiving and never picked up their pay. Logbooks are compared, bank withdrawals sniffed at. A neighbor's boast in a bar becomes an affidavit, a family story becomes a lead, and the leads multiply into a forest of maybes. A very real historical echo hits less than 6 months after you step into the wind. In April 1972, another man hijacks another Boeing 727, orders the aft stairs lowered, and exits the sky just as you did. The copycat trick shot Floyd McCoylan's Messi and Live, and unlike you, he's arrested within days, his house full of parachute gear and cash. He even looks, to some eyes, like your sketch. But the Bureau compares ears, hands, manner, method, and says it isn't you. The copycat is a soldier and a skydiver. He is also, inconveniently, already in Utah during your November feat. Historians still debate whether people wanted McCoy to be you simply because tidy endings feel better than blank pages. 7 years after your jump, a small plastic placard from a Boeing rear steer-on instruction plate turns up in a patch of Washington forest, northeast of where some maps put you. It could have been blown free when the staircase banged open. It could have ridden the air like a leaf. It is one of those clues that offers a direction without a destination, like a pointing finger in a field with no roads. Then, in 1980, a boy digging sand on the Columbia River at a place called Tennebar uncovers 3 rotting stacks of $20 bills, roughly $5,800 total. The serial numbers match your ransom. It's not a fortune, it's a flare fired from a memory. The bundles look water-worn, banded still but fragile, as if they'd been buried and unburied by the river again and again. Historians still debate whether the money washed downstream from your landing was tossed into the water from the shore, or was carried by dredging operations that chewed and spat the riverbed like a giant metal mouth. The find proves one thing beyond rumor. At least some of your cash escaped the airplane. Whether you did is a separate question. Meanwhile, the airplane industry bolts a new idea onto old metal, a simple wedge that uses airflow to force the rear stairs closed once airborne. It's inelegant and perfect. They call it a device among engineers. The world calls it something else, the name you left behind attached to a moving part that will outlive the last 727. That, too, is a historical event, written not with ink but with rivets. Because of you, a staircase that once swung open in flight now leans hard against the wind and refuses. The suspects keep arriving, each carrying just enough smoke to look like fire. A retired paratrooper with a temper and a taste for bourbon. A former airline mechanic who knew his way around a 727 and vanished for a weekend. A salesman who confesses on his deathbed and leaves his wife with a head full of impossible proofs. A brilliant but slippery ex-military man who seems to fit until you measure him closely and he slides out of the frame. Sometimes the hook is a photo, cheekbones, a tie, and nose. Sometimes it's a coincidence of geography, a property line near the flight path, a cabin with a shed full of rope, and sometimes it's just a story, a nephew with a box in the attic, a diary entry where a name should be. Every few years, a fresh forensic trick strides onto the stage. The tie is re-examined. Technicians whisper about titanium particles common to manufacturers of airframes and perhaps even to the chemical lines that fed them. Fibers are pulled, compared, pollen grains are studied as if they might spell a zip code. Historians still debate whether these tiny finds truly narrow the world to your single footprint, or simply remind us that men who fly often carry airports home with them on their clothes. The Bureau officially closes the book in 2016, not with a flourish but with a weary nod. If new, credible evidence surfaces, they will listen, but the active chase to overtime, the cold hike into slash piles, the parade of false confessions winds down. The case file is as heavy as the bag of money that once rode on your hip. Inside it, teletype chatter, hand-drawn maps, interviews typed in block paragraphs, lab reports with clipped conclusions. A history of a hunt can be a history of hope, and Noriak has a lot of both. Outside the gray corridors of bureaucracy, your ghost works a different shift. There are conferences people swap theories the way fishermen swap lures. There are podcasts that breathe slow, late-night air into your legend, TV specials that storyboard your jump in crisp recreations, and message boards where diagrams bloom like winter mushrooms. A town celebrates you every November until the tavern closes and the sign comes down. The sketches of your face, with that side-parted hair and those calm eyes, become so common they could sell coffee, and still the forest keeps its own counsel. Along the lower Columbia, the sand shifts. Up in the hills, the fir needles settle in seasons. Metal detectors sing to beer tabs while the real prize, if it ever lay there, sleeps deeper. Hikers find bones that belong to deer and elk. Hunters find shells that belong to someone else's weekend. From time to time, a scrap emerges that could be everything. A strap, a fragment of nylon, a scrap of canvas that might as well be a promise. Laboratory work says no, not this time. You left oddness behind you like footprints. The way you asked for 4 parachutes when 2 would do was that misdirection to prevent sabotage, or simply a hedge against failure. The way you insisted on a certain airspeed and altitude was that knowledge from training or text. The way you chose a holiday eve when banks were full of cash and airports were full of people who just wanted to get home was that luck or an eye for human nature. Historians still debate whether you were an expert masking as a gentleman or a gentleman dressing as an expert and getting away with it through audacity and weather. A quirky truth worms its way into the folklore. You ordered meals for the crew before the second takeoff. Polite hijacker, efficient planner, patron of airline cuisine. It reads like a joke until you realize it was leveraged too. Fed crews are calm crews, and calm crews follow checklists, and checklists kept your odd flight profile within the lines you needed drawn. Even your iconography cooperates. A tie loosened and left behind, the most office park thing ever to become a relic. Decades on, people stand at Tanabar with their kids and reenact the boy's discovery with plastic shovels, wondering if another bundle is only inches down. They pose by the river and say your name like it's a charm. They ask the water what the water remembers, and the water, as usual, says nothing. They pull up maps on their phones and pinch and zoom and draw their own green lines over salmon rivers and logging roads, and for a few minutes they are in your head, deciding where the wind would push a body, where a canopy would snag, where a man would hide a suit and a smile and walk toward a town with his shoulders wet. If you died that night, the woods hid you well. If you lived, the world didn't notice you walking out. The money turning up by the river implies one thing, and the lost cigarette butts imply another, and the tie suggests a third, and all 3 of those things share only this: you were there, you were real, and you were careful. The rest is weather and wishes. So the hunt becomes not just for you, but for an answer large enough to hold all the contradictions. You were reckless enough to step into a storm and deliberate enough to choose a jet with a backdoor few people knew about. You were theatrical enough to hijack an airplane and modest enough to vanish without a speech. You were dangerous enough to make agents sprint and polite enough to say please. Somewhere between those edges is a person with a past and a plan. Historians still debate whether the scale tips toward a trained professional or a brilliant amateur who saw a gap and stepped cleanly through it, and the myths, they come easy. You bought a drink in a desert bar a week later and tipped in muddy 20s. You showed up at a family picnic wearing a new suit and nobody asked why. You sent a postcard to a cousin. You hid the cash in the walls and forgot which house. You hung the parachute as curtains. You laughed every Thanksgiving until you didn't. The myths are the glitter that sticks after the parade. They're not the parade, but they keep people looking up at a cold November sky and asking the same stubborn question the Bureau eventually had to fold and file. Did you make it? They chased you through time zones and timber tracks, through interviews and lab benches, through talk shows and taverns. They found your tie, a plastic placard, and 3 small stacks of bills that smell like river and rumor. What they didn't find is a body, or a confession that survives close inspection, or a reason why a man with your nerve and calm simply stopped. So the hunt keeps walking. It walks in museums where your composite sketch hangs. It walks in living rooms where old men say they knew a guy. It walks in the soft clatter of a conference hall where the next theory loads onto a projector, and people nod, and then they argue, and then they go home and stare at maps instead of sleeping. And it walks, still, in the forest that swallowed a question, which is exactly where you left it. The years slide by, and yet your shadow doesn't fade. You made a leap into the November dark, and the country never stopped staring at the hole you left in the sky. The FBI kept your case open for more than 4 decades longer than most agents' careers until, finally, in 2016, the file was shelved. Officially, they admitted defeat. Unofficially, the search for you never stopped. America turned you into folklore. Newspapers splashed your sketch across front pages. The composite drawing of a man with side-parted hair, sunglasses, and a calm expression. That face became iconic, stamped on t-shirts, posters, even beer labels. Bars hosted annual D.B. Cooper parties, complete with parachutes hung from rafters and mock ransom notes taped to the wall. In the small town of Ariel, Washington, locals gathered every November to raise a glass to you. They told stories that grew wilder with each retelling. Sightings in Canada, rumors in Mexico, a drifter's tale from the Oregon woods. Historians still debate whether you were a symbol of daring rebellion in a cynical age, or simply a criminal who gambled with innocent lives. But your timing carved its mark into history. It was 1971. America weary from Vietnam, trust in institutions eroding, hijackings frequent enough to numb. Then came you, polite, precise, and utterly successful in outmaneuvering an entire government. You didn't fit the mold of a desperate terrorist or a reckless thug. You were clean-cut, sipping bourbon, courteous to the crew. That contradiction lodged in the public imagination. The outlaw who never fired a shot, a quirky ripple remains in the aviation world. Airlines quietly installed Cooper vanes, simple metal wedges on Boeing 727s, that locked the rear stair in place once airborne. That engineering fix bore your name more firmly than any court record ever did. It is history literally bolted to airplanes, a reminder every time a 727 rolled down a runway that one man turned a staircase into an exit no one expected. Then there was the money. In 1980, a young boy digging in the sand at Tenaba on the Columbia River unearthed nearly $6,000 of your marked bills, weathered, rubber-banded, decayed, but undeniably yours. That find reignited every theory. Did you bury it? Did it wash downstream after you died in the woods? Did you scatter it deliberately, laughing at investigators from a distance? Historians still debate the meaning of those sodden bundles. They prove you existed. They don't prove whether you lived or died. Suspects came and went. Each new name was touted as very likely Cooper. Military men, paratroopers, ex-cons, engineers, salesmen. Some confessed on their deathbeds. Others were accused by bitter relatives. None fit perfectly. Ears too small, height too tall, alibis too firm. The FBI crossed them off one by one, and still your ghost outpaced them. Even now, cold case sleuths argue fiercely online, swapping documents and magnifying photographs of your type-in, hunting for the one clue that cracks you open. But maybe the truth is less important than the legend, because what you left behind was bigger than any pile of money. You became a figure whispered about at dinner tables, studied in classrooms, dramatized in films. You became the polite phantom outlaw, the man who proved it was possible to vanish in an age already tightening with surveillance. You leapt into the dark, and instead of vanishing, you became immortal. And perhaps that's why your story endures. Not because of what you took, but because of what you left. Mystery. The kind that bends around facts, the kind that resists neat conclusions, the kind that keeps people awake long after midnight, imagining the rush of cold air on their face, the ground rushing up unseen, the rope of a parachute cutting across their chest. It's been more than 50 years. The forest has changed, the rivers have shifted, the people who chased you are long retired or gone, but the question remains, sharper than ever. Did you survive? Did you step out of that parachute soaking wet, vanish into a cabin with a fire already lit, and live the rest of your life under another name? Or did the storm close around you, a final curtain over an act too daring to repeat? Historians still debate, and maybe they always will. So now, as the hours grow late and the wind rattles softly at your window, the story of D.B. Cooper drifts into a kind of dream. You imagine the Boeing's engines fading into distance, the cabin empty, the tie resting abandoned on a seat. You imagine a figure stepping into rain-soaked night, swallowed by clouds, by trees, by time itself. For some, Cooper is a ghost who never survived his jump. For others, he is a trickster who outwitted everyone, blending back into the crowd with a sly smile. The FBI may have closed its file, but curiosity never did. Even today, his story ripples through books, documentaries, whispered theories over late-night drinks, and in that persistence lies the real legacy. He reminds us that not every puzzle must be solved to have power, that sometimes the unknown carries its own weight, heavier than facts, that a single man, with calm manners and a black briefcase, can leave a mark larger than the sum of his deeds. The mystery lingers like smoke in the cabin, like footsteps on a staircase left open to the wind. It lulls you toward sleep, toward the space where questions have no sharp edges. Was he a reckless criminal or a master of disguise? Did he die in the forest, or live quietly into old age? You close your eyes and the answer slips away like a parachute vanishing into clouds. Somewhere between sky and earth, between certainty and doubt, D. Cooper remains an American phantom, carried forward by the hush of legend.